A 5-minute Instagram video. Posted on a Wednesday in early July. And 11 words at the end of it that made Taylor Swift's name land in every entertainment headline before the day was over. The words were simple. They were said by Emily Baldoni, the wife of Justin Baldoni, the director and co-star at the center of one of the most devastating Hollywood legal stories of the last 2 years. Emily looked at the camera, after nearly 4.5 minutes of careful, measured reflection on what her family had been through, and she said, "There's so much more to say. The time will come. That time will come." And Taylor Swift, who is in her kitchen learning Italian and baking sourdough bread and trying very hard to live the quiet, blissful married life that every source close to her has described as the happiest period of her adult life, she was reportedly not thrilled. Because, "there's so much more to say," is not just an Emily Baldoni sentence. It is a warning. It is a door being left deliberately open. It is the sentence you say when you want everyone watching to understand that the story is not over. That the version of events that has been presented publicly is incomplete. That there are things you know and have not yet said, and that you have decided not to say them yet, and that the decision to hold them is a choice you are making deliberately, for reasons that may change. And Taylor Swift, who has spent 18 months trying to extract her name from a legal dispute she had nothing to do with, now has to live inside the knowledge that the time will come. That whatever that time brings, her name will probably be in it. Because her name is in the documents. Because her friendship with Blake Lively was central to the legal narrative in ways that were never fully explained. Because she was served with a subpoena, which was later withdrawn, but which happened and was reported and cannot be undocumented. The reality is, as a source told an outlet, she's always going to be tied to this drama. There's no escaping that. This is the story of why, and how she got there, and where everyone involved in this mess currently stands. Let's go back to the beginning. It Ends With Us is one of the most anticipated films of the year. Based on Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel about a woman who leaves an abusive relationship, the film stars Blake Lively, who also produces it, and is directed by Justin Baldoni, who co-stars. The two of them, working together on a story about power dynamics and the complicated emotions of leaving someone who has hurt you, are supposed to be telling a story that matters. A story that many survivors of difficult relationships are waiting to see told on screen. The film comes out. It generates enormous discussion, some about the work itself, most about everything else. Because the relationship between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni has apparently broken down in ways that are severe and public and escalating. In December 2024, Blake Lively files a civil rights complaint against Justin Baldoni. She alleges sexual harassment and sexual misconduct. She also alleges that Baldoni and his publicist have launched a coordinated smear campaign against her, a deliberate, orchestrated effort to damage her reputation and paint her as the villain in a situation where she says she was the victim. The complaint lands like a nuclear device in the middle of Hollywood. Blake Lively accusing her director of harassment and then an intentional reputation destruction campaign is not a small story. It is the story. It runs everywhere. It generates weeks and then months of coverage. It divides Hollywood into camps. It produces a wave of takes and counterarguments and testimonials and leaked text messages and legal filings. And somewhere in Baldoni's legal response, in the counter-narrative being assembled by his team, a decision was made that nobody involved could fully have anticipated. They named Taylor Swift, not as a wrongdoer, not as a co-conspirator, but as a piece of evidence in the argument that Blake Lively had been using her celebrity relationships as leverage, that she had deployed the weight of her friendship with the most famous musician in the world as a form of social and professional pressure. The argument was that Taylor Swift's name had been used, that Taylor Swift's relationship with Blake had been used, that the association with Taylor was part of how Blake had operated in the dispute. Baldoni's legal team subpoenaed Taylor Swift. The most famous woman in popular music was issued a legal document compelling her participation in a case about a film she had never been involved in, between two people whose professional dispute she had nothing to do with. The subpoena was eventually withdrawn. Taylor was not ultimately required to testify or produce documents. But the subpoena happened. It was reported. And the existence of it, the fact that Taylor Swift's name was in court documents, that her friendship with Blake was being characterized as a legal instrument, was public. And then the text messages. Court documents in cases like this become public through the process of legal filings, and what became public in the Baldoni-Lively proceedings were private communications between Taylor Swift and Blake Lively. Messages sent between two friends during a difficult period. The messages were never intended for anyone outside their friendship. They were private expressions of one friend's worry about another. And then they were in court documents. And then they were reported everywhere. One of those messages, Taylor's message to Blake, said something that has not been forgotten. It feels awful to be in any way critical of any way you process what you've been going through, but I just kinda miss my funny, dark, normal-speaking friend who talks to me as herself. A private message about missing a friend. Published. Reported. Discussed. Analyzed by people who had no business reading it. Made into a piece of evidence in a legal dispute that was not about Taylor Swift at all. Taylor Swift felt, according to multiple sources, massively betrayed. Not just by the legal situation. By the feeling that the friendship itself had been instrumentalized. That her name and her relationship with Blake had become tools in a dispute that she wanted no part of. That something she kept private had been made public without her consent, through the mechanism of a lawsuit she had nothing to do with. And the friendship, which had been one of the most visible and apparently genuine of Taylor Swift's celebrity friendships, went cold. Quiet. And then apparently ended. Blake was not at Taylor's wedding on July 3, 2026. An event with 1,100 guests, including Tom Hanks and Paul McCartney and Steven Spielberg and the commissioner of the NFL. Taylor had said, on Graham Norton's show, that she would invite anyone I've ever talked to. And the woman who was her best friend for over a decade, to whose children she was the godmother, that woman was not there. The absence said everything that a statement never could. Back to the video. July 9, 2026. The day after America's 4th of July celebrations, the day after the afterglow of the most famous wedding in recent memory was still fresh and warm. Justin Baldoni posts a 5-minute video on Instagram with his wife Emily. The legal background at this point. It is complicated and not fully resolved. In April 2026, a federal judge dismissed most of Lively's case against Baldoni. Her claim of sexual harassment, the core allegation of her original complaint, was dismissed. However, she was allowed to continue pursuing a retaliation claim against Baldoni's public relations teams. The case continued. And then, in May 2026, Baldoni and Lively reached a settlement agreement. The lawsuit, at least in its main form, was over. Settled. Done. Except it wasn't fully done. Because the legal fee dispute followed. And a federal judge ruled that Baldoni and his Wayfarer Studios production company had to pay Blake Lively's legal fees. Not a small number. $8,035,040.88. That exact number. The specificity of court orders. Over $8 million in legal fees, to be paid to Lively's legal team as a result of the portion of the case she won. So when Justin Baldoni posted the video on July 9th, when he and Emily sat down and spoke publicly for the first time in nearly 2 years, this was the aftermath they were speaking from. A settlement. An $8 million legal fee judgment. And an agreement that supposedly ended things. And yet, there's so much more to say. The time will come. Justin Baldoni, in the video, explained why he had been silent. He said, "We have not spoken publicly for the better part of the last 2 years, and it's not because we haven't had anything to say, because Lord knows we have. But it just felt like every time we went to make a video like this, we wanted to speak, something was telling us not to. It just didn't feel like the right time." He said he and Emily chose not to contribute to the noise. He said he wanted to let the justice system run its course. He said he is healing. We are healing. And if you've ever been through something traumatic, you know that healing isn't linear. It looks different every day. Emily said, "The truth and the facts have spoken for themselves. And here we are. The truth and the facts have spoken for themselves." That sentence is doing an enormous amount of work. Because the facts, as they emerged through the legal process, were genuinely complicated. Lively's sexual harassment claim was dismissed. Baldoni's defamation countersuit was also dismissed. What the court allowed to continue, the retaliation claim against his PR teams, was narrower than either side's original framing. The question of who, if anyone, is unambiguously the villain in this story was never fully answered by the legal process. Which means both sides have things they feel were not said. Both sides feel there is more to the story. Both sides apparently believe that the public version of events is incomplete in ways that damage them. And Emily Baldoni ended the video by making that belief explicit. There's so much more to say. The time will come. But for now, we are going to focus on continuing the healing and hanging out with our kiddos and enjoying life. That last clause, the hanging out with kiddos, the enjoying life, is doing the work of softening the sentence that came before it. There's so much more to say, is the statement. We're going to enjoy life first, is the signal that the statement is not immediate. Not today. Not this month, maybe. But the door is open. The material exists. When the time comes, they intend to share it. And the question that immediately follows that door being opened, what does so much more to say include? Does it include Taylor Swift? That is the question that nobody can answer from the outside. That is the question that sources close to the situation are reportedly worried about inside Taylor Swift's orbit. Because here is the thing about Taylor Swift's connection to this case that is easy to forget when the headlines have moved on. Taylor's role in this story, the subpoena, the text messages, the friendship with Blake that was characterized as leverage in legal filings, all of that came from Baldoni's side of the dispute. It was his team that subpoenaed her. It was his team's legal filings that characterized Blake's use of their friendship as a pressure tactic. If Baldoni has so much more to say, if Emily's words about the time coming means that the Baldoni family intends to speak more publicly about what they went through, then what they say is unlikely to be a rehabilitation of Taylor Swift's image or a clarification that her name should never have been in any of this. Their so much more to say serves their narrative, their version of events, the version in which they are the people who experienced injustice and pain. And whatever that version says or implies about Taylor Swift's role in the situation, about the friendship between Taylor and Blake and what that friendship meant in the context of Blake's dispute with Justin, that is the thing that sources say Taylor Swift is worried about. The source told an outlet, the reality is that she's always going to be tied to this drama. There's no escaping that. There's no escaping it. Her name is in the documents. Her text messages are in the record. Her friendship with Blake is part of the case's history. And if anyone who was involved in the case decides to speak publicly, whether that's the Baldoni family or Blake Lively or someone else, Taylor Swift's name is likely to appear. She cannot prevent that. She cannot send a legal letter that keeps her name out of someone else's account of events that legitimately involved her. She cannot retroactively remove the subpoena from the record. She cannot unmake the text message public. What she can do is what she is apparently doing. Living her life. Learning Italian. Baking sourdough. Working out every day with her husband. Being blissed out, as the Daily Mail source described her, in the quiet domestic routine of early marriage while Travis is at training camp. Staying out of the spotlight. Not commenting. Not responding. Not engaging. This is actually Taylor Swift's most consistent and effective strategy for navigating situations she cannot control. When she cannot change the story, she steps back from it. She lets it run. She does not add fuel. She does not respond to every development or every provocation. She has done this before. During the public feuds that defined her career in the 2010s, she eventually learned that the most powerful response is sometimes no response. She did not comment when the Baldoni video was posted. She has not commented on any development in this case. She will not, presumably, comment on the prospect of the Baldonis having more to say. She will continue to not comment while the situation continues to evolve. But she is aware of it. Her team is aware of it. And the awareness, as sources describe it, is not comfortable. Now let's talk about Blake Lively. Because the other thread in this story, the one the user's material references but which also needs its full context, is the suggestion that Blake herself might eventually speak. An insider close to both women told an outlet, the longer that Blake is vilified, the more likely it is that she'll decide to have her say and explain everything she's been through. It wouldn't be about making money, it would simply be about clearing her name and telling her side of the nightmare. Blake Lively has been largely quiet. Her first post-wedding absence public appearance was on July 19th, at the FIFA World Cup final at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, wearing Argentina colors and posting a selfie with friends that said nothing about anything and everything simultaneously. She has not commented on the wedding. She has not addressed the state of her friendship with Taylor Swift. But the source's framing is interesting. The longer that Blake is vilified. Who is vilifying Blake? The narrative that has been most damaging to her publicly has not come primarily from Baldoni, whose legal team's filings made many of the most explosive claims about her conduct. It has come from the broader discourse, from a public that initially rallied to her side when she filed her complaint and then, as the legal proceedings produced complications and the judge dismissed many of her claims, shifted its assessment. Blake Lively is in a position that is, in certain ways, more complicated than Taylor Swift's in this entire mess. Taylor is connected to it through her friendship with Blake and the weaponization of that friendship in legal filings. Blake is connected to it because it is her lawsuit, her complaint, her career and reputation that have been most directly affected. The settlement that ended the case resolved the legal dispute without resolving the public relations one. Blake Lively's reputation has taken damage. The question of what actually happened between her and Justin Baldoni on the set of It Ends With Us, the specific incidents that led to the harassment complaint, was never adjudicated in a public trial. The case settled before the trial that had been scheduled for May 2026. And in the absence of a trial, of testimony, of a verdict, the public narrative has been shaped by leaks and filings and legal arguments rather than by any coherent, complete account. If Blake Lively decides to tell her story, if she sits down with a journalist or writes a memoir or gives an interview that covers what she says she experienced, it will inevitably include Taylor Swift. Not because Taylor did anything wrong, but because the friendship was real, and the friendship became part of the case, and any complete account of what Blake went through includes the account of what happened to that friendship. A source put it plainly, Taylor will be in Blake's story no matter what. The question is what version of Taylor appears, and what version of the friendship appears. Whether it is the version of a betrayed friendship, Taylor pulling back when things became legally complicated in ways that affected her, or whether it is more complicated than that. Whether Blake's account includes the text message that Taylor sent, in which Taylor clearly still cared enough about Blake to say the hard true thing about missing her funny, dark, normal-speaking friend. Nobody knows. Because Blake hasn't told her story yet. And Justin Baldoni says the time will come. And Taylor Swift is in a kitchen learning Italian, which is one of the most civilized possible responses to being permanently tied to a Hollywood drama you want no part of. Here is what is actually going on, stripped of the gossip framing. 3 people who were connected, 2 through a film, 1 through friendship, ended up in a situation that was legally complex, publicly devastating, and personally irreversible. The friendship between Taylor and Blake, which was genuine and deep and lasted over a decade, was broken not by one specific dramatic event but by the accumulated weight of a situation that made it impossible to continue. The trust that was the foundation of that friendship was damaged by the process, by the subpoena, by the text messages becoming public, by the feeling on Taylor's side that something private had been exposed without her consent. That friendship is, by every indication, over. Or at minimum, has been reduced to something unrecognizable from what it was. And now a video has been posted. And 11 words are sitting in the internet's memory. There's so much more to say. The time will come. Taylor Swift, in her kitchen, is aware of those words. Her team is aware of those words. And the specific quality of the awareness, the specific not thrilledness that sources describe, is the awareness of someone who knows that they are in someone else's story. Not as the protagonist. Not as the villain. As a character whose appearance in the narrative is not under their control. She has done everything she can do. She stepped back from the friendship when the friendship became legally entangled. She declined to engage with any of it publicly. She married Travis Kelce in the most spectacular and private wedding of the year and started learning Italian and working out every day. She has lived as if the drama does not touch her. But there's no escaping it, the source says. The video has been posted. The words have been said. And somewhere, in the coming months, in the undefined future time when Emily Baldoni believes the time will come, something more will be said. And Taylor Swift's name will probably be in it. She cannot prevent that. She can only continue doing what she is doing. Showing up every day, even when the mysterious muses and the magic don't. Writing songs in notebooks. Working out with her husband in the mornings. Making bread. Being blissed out, as much as the circumstances allow, in the early months of a marriage she has described as the happiest time of her life. The Hollywood group chat is not muting her. But she has put her phone down. And she is focusing on the kitchen. And when the time comes, and there is something to respond to, she will respond in the only language she has ever trusted completely. She will write a song. Stay close. Because this story is not over. For any of them.